what statistics say about gender equality across the world. So women and girls, they represent half of the world's population and therefore half of the world's potential. Now, gender equality is not just a basic fundamental human right, but it is also very important in order to achieve economic growth as well as sustainable development, and also to promote peace and harmonization in the society. So that is why gender equality is important, and organizations and countries across the world have been working a lot for this particular concept. So just I got this picture from the internet because I think this image clearly depicts what kind of challenges women face in today's society. It's not just managing your careers, your education, but it also about your family responsibilities, your child care, etc. and etc. So I would say work for a woman never ends. Whether it is at job or whether it is at home, she's always going. So in this presentation, the contents would be, first of all, I would be talking about some of the theoretical aspects and how United Nations see women equality as the 5th Sustainable Development Goal. Then a snapshot about how gender equality looks across the world. And since I come from science, I would also take this opportunity to highlight how much gender inequality exists in science, not only in terms of pay benefits, I would say, but it's also about access to equal opportunities. And then lastly, where are we now and how much time it would take for us in order to really achieve this gender parity? And yes, the disclaimer, the opinions expressed solely belong to me and not to my organization. So moving on firstly about the international frameworks. So how this concept of equality came up. Before we go into gender equality, let's talk about equality as a fundamental right. So United Nations General Assembly in 1946 passed this declaration that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. That means that every human being across the world, irrespective of country, gender, race, they have got equal rights and they are entitled to that. Now, this particular declaration was further extended to some social and political rights also, and that is why we can say that all human beings in the world, they have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, as well as economic and political rights, as well as freedom. Now, the question arises that when United Nations say that all human beings are born equal and free, so that means men and women are equal. So now why we are worrying so much about gender equality? Gender equality usually exists in those areas where there are differences between men and women. So feminist people might be saying that, okay, men and women are equal. However, there are certain differences between them. They have different resources, they have different access to education, as well as they have different opinions and voices within their homes, as well as society. So World Bank came up with this concept that there should be a rationale for gender equality. And basically this rationale is of two types. Firstly, I would say the human rights rationale and then the economic one. So human rights rationale is basically to protect the rights of the women in order to avoid any kind of discrimination against them. Coming over to economic rationale, there have been a number of reports by World Bank which states that the GDPs can really grow up to 20% if women and girls are given equal opportunities, their pay is increased. So the main reasons for slower economic growth as well as slower socio-economic development is also that we don't give equal rights to women across the globe. And these two rationales, they lay the foundation why gender equality is important. Now, moving on to approaches to equality, there are different approaches to equality and they have different outcomes also. So, the first one is the formal equality, in which we say that women and men are same. So, we must treat them in a similar way. That means we are not taking into account any kind of biological or gender differences between them. However, this kind of equality approach really creates a kind of gender blindness because women are deprived from their rights. So I'll give an example to illustrate this situation. So for example, there is a job position in a high-paying multinational company, and they say that they have a non-discriminating policy. So that means they will give equal opportunities to men and women for this particular job. However, majority of the women don't have access to that advanced kind of education or advanced kind of training course which is required for that particular job. So ultimately, even if it is a non-discriminating policy, they are far behind in this race when they are competing with men. So just have a look at this picture. You see that there are different animals. They are of different sizes. They have different beaks. And obviously, they'll require different amounts of water to quench their thirst. But what is happening around is they are drinking water from the same pool of water. So obviously, because of the differences which exist, the outcomes would also be different. And that is why this is one of the main points where women lag behind men because they don't have access to equal opportunities as well as resources. Moving to the next approach is protectionism. So this states that women or men are different, so they must be treated differently. And the major goal is to protect women. Now, because of this approach, it creates a kind of protective phenomena for women, and they are deprived of certain fundamental rights. They are deprived of certain kind of, I would say, the things which they can enjoy. And that is the reason why, again, women, they lag behind men in most of the situations. So again, I have an example to illustrate this. So in 1900 in United States, there was a case going on in court, and they were deciding that how much number of working hours should be there, either for men or women. And the court decided that because women are physically, they're not that much strong, they are fragile. That's why the number of working hours for women should be less. So this protectionism, it creates a kind of barrier which further inhibits the development of women. So in this image, you see there is a cage and there is a bird. So this bird is having its own pot of water, and it is not free to move about. While the other animals are free, they are sitting and they can drink water or move around freely. So this is the limitation which, again, this kind of approach of protectionism is created for women. Now, moving over to the next approach is the substantive equality. So this is a kind of much accepted approach at the moment, where it is said that there are differences in women and men and how they experience life, and therefore we should minimize the negative effects of this. Now, therefore, the major goal is there to promote the equality of outcomes. That means that we are just going to focus on what the outcome is rather than what kind of differences usually exist in this whole process. So if you see in this picture, the animals are different, but now they have got different sort of pots for drinking water. And that is why in this way they can drink water on their own without a sort of illogical comparison between different animals. So this is a kind of corrective model of equality which is gaining popularity, and I think it's been a widely accepted model as compared to the other ones. Now, moving over to what United Nations says about gender equality. So United Nations has a concept of 17 sustainable development goals. which are there to promote peace, harmonization in the society. And as they say that women have a critical role to play in all of these SDGs, it is important that first of all, the world should focus on this fifth sustainable development goal, that is of gender equality. So having a look around, I would say that much work has been done in this area. There has been a lot of progress. Many girls are going to school, and we can proudly say that I can say that there are more number of female engineers as compared to the males. So this is how the situation is improving day by day. There is more representation of women in parliament as well as politics and leadership positions. However, still a lot needs to be done in this area. Still, there are many countries in which the situation is not right. So now I would just focus upon specifically what are these 5 goal targets and how they tend to eliminate all kind of discrimination against women. So these state that the major objective has been to end all forms of violence, domestic violence, or maybe at workplace or any other type of exploitation. Then to eliminate child early as well as post marriages, and recognize and value unpaid care as well as domestic work. Again, there has been a lot of work which is also going on in the area of reproductive health and reproductive rights, because still there are many countries in which the mortality rate, especially the maternity mortality rate, is very high. And that is why, because of certain policies and because of these delegations, the United Nations is working upon ensuring a better access to such kind of healthcare services. And then also to ensure that women have equal rights to economic resources, as well as access and ownership to property, as well as other financial services. So I would say that yes, these are the 5 goal targets which have been defined by United Nations, but more or less these are still on the paper only, and work has been done in these areas. But even at the moment, if we think about, it would take us another 200 years in order to really achieve these objectives across the globe. Now, as I said that work has been done, there has been great progress, but still there are certain areas and there are certain parts across the globe which face a large amount of gender parity or gender inequality. For example, I would share that in almost 18% of the countries across the globe, the husbands, they can prevent or they can stop their partners from doing job outside. In almost 38% of the countries across the globe, daughters and sons, they don't have equal inheritance right to the property. And almost in 49% parts of the globe, still there are no laws against any kind of domestic violence, etc. So we talk about a lot about how the situation has improved, but the time now is really to focus upon those areas in which still a lot of work needs to be done, and those gaps really need to be bridged up in order to really achieve this kind of gender parity or gender equality. Now, biggest problems women face today, I would say there are n number of problems or n number of challenges. However, I would like to focus on a few of them. So first of all, lack of women in positions of power. There is still very less representation of women in political bodies or in parliament, and also in the corporate boardrooms or CEOs of the companies. So for example, in Asia Pacific, out of every 4 CEO in Asia Pacific, just 1 single is the women and the rest is their men counterparts. So the representation has really improved over the years, but in certain areas, women are still underrepresented. Then coming over to patriarchy. Now, patriarchy is when we say that all the women, they are having equal education, they are having maybe they are having the equal talent, and they can do a job nicely. However, still it is assumed in the society that because she is a woman, she's not able to do that particular task properly, or maybe there might be a male counterpart who can do it in a better way. So this concept of patriarchy really needs to be eliminated from the society. Then, obviously, workplace sexual harassment or racism, and then trauma centered feminism. So, feminism is, people generally say that, okay, a girl is or a woman is really fragile, really weak. So, she must be in a well protected environment. She's not access to those opportunities if we really don't consider this term or this word which is used, feminism. And I would also say that nowadays, in the name of women empowerment or gender equality, the word feminism is being used very rapidly. But still, I would say that women empowerment is really different from what people have started talking about feminism these days. Then moving over to access to equal opportunities and lack of respect for caregiving. So I would say that a woman is doing two full-time jobs. She's not only managing her career, but also family and also caregiving maybe to her siblings, parents, in-laws, spouse, relatives. So there should always be that kind of empathy and sensitiveness towards women because they are doing a lot for you, they're contributing a lot for you. And then navigating career and motherhood. So there was a study in US where it was found that almost 50% women, they leave active science after a motherhood because they cannot, carry both the things together, or there's no one to take care of the child. So I would say that these responsibilities really need to be shared between both men and women so that women have an equal opportunity in making up their career. And then economy is not working for women. So till now also in most of the jobs, women are underpaid as compared to men, and they don't have equal rights in most of the maybe they don't have equal say in financial decisions which are made. So that is why this aspect really also needs to be worked upon. Now, moving over to Gender Inequality Index. So, Gender Inequality Index is a term which is reported by United Nations, and it works upon comparing the countries based upon their economic status, and it also takes into account what kind of services are provided to the women in terms of healthcare, education, and other resources. So this index called the Gender Inequality Index, it measures inequalities in three dimensions. First of all is the reproductive health, which is based on maternal mortality ratio. Then is empowerment, that how many parliamentary seats are occupied by females, as well as the economic status based upon the active participation of women in economic growth. So that is how United Nations keeps a check across the globe. And this Gender Inequality Index report, this kind of analysis is carried out annually because it ultimately helps in policy intervention, and it brings about those areas where we actually need to think about and where we actually need to work about that how we can improve the situation. Now, as I said in the beginning, that I'll be talking about the global perspective, not only how just India looks like, but across the globe, how the situation is. So the image on the left-hand side is the Global Gender Gap Report 2020. And this Global Gender Gap Report is basically a kind of analysis which is done to identify that how much gap still exists between these genders across the globe. So as you can see that we'll start from the lowest one, that is those who are having an index of 125 to 153, which is really a worst one. And you can see that a number of countries in the African continent, as well as in the Middle East, Asia, the global gender gap is really very less, and women are really deprived of their rights. Moving ahead from 95 to 125 is this spot is taken by the Indian subcontinent, including China, Bangladesh, India. And yes, I would say the situation is not that much better in India also, though it's slightly better as compared to the African continent, but still disappointing. Then moving over to the next lot is 63 to 94, where this part is covered by most of the countries like Russia, Kazakhstan, and then a few countries like Brazil in South America. The good performers of this report are the ones in this fluorescent green color, which is Canada and a few parts here in Europe. These are basically the Nordic countries like Denmark, Finland, and Sweden. Then performing relatively okay is 32 to 62 is United States of America, Australia. So a surprising thing for me was that I would really have assumed that, okay, since United States is a superpower in the world, definitely this gender gap should not be that much. But for my surprise, even United States stands at a position of 53rd in a list of 146 countries. So we can say that even in developed economies, gender parity has not been attained that much to that level that we can say, okay, we are almost near to achieving gender equality. So this is how the global world looks like. And the snapshot on the right-hand side is the top 10 most gender equal countries. So in this case, Iceland is the forerunner, followed by, again, the Nordic countries. That's Norway, Finland, and Sweden. New Zealand, Spain, and surprisingly is this African country, that's Rwanda, followed by Germany at 10th spot. So it's not very much surprising to see, because I can see that almost 3 countries have female representatives. So in Finland, the current Prime Minister, Sanna Marin, is working a lot, and she is the youngest head representative, just at the age of 34. Then for New Zealand, we are having Jacqueline Arends, who has gained a lot of appreciation for her work or dealing in this COVID scenario situation. So she is also a very young and active Prime Minister leading New Zealand. And then obviously we have, in Germany, we have our Chancellor Angela Merkel, who has been serving the country since last 25 years. So this shows that a number of countries who are led by female leaders, they have relatively done far better as compared to the other ones in this gender parity thing. So first of all, now I've divided this global perspective into 3 parts, focusing on Asia Pacific, Europe, and United States. So first of all, talking about Asia Pacific. Now Asia Pacific, I would say currently it's the hotspot for growth and development. There's a lot of technology and innovation going on, lot of investments, and the fast growing economies are present in this region. However, the report on gender equality is very unsatisfactory for Asia Pacific. So despite the progress they have made in other areas, gender parity is still what is a challenge, because to me, it appears that Asia Pacific still has those kind of conventional thinking and conventional approaches where women is still considered lower as compared to men. So that is one of the reasons which you can see in this report. So this is McKinsey analysis, which was, I think, done in maybe 2019 or 20, where they have compared the different countries of Asia Pacific in different scenarios. So as you can see, first of all, is for the work, then for the services, and how the representation going on in the legal as well as the political scenario, and then what kind of physical security is offered to the women in these countries. So I think the best performers in this analysis has been Australia, New Zealand, Singapore and Philippines. As you can see in the work and legal and political scenarios, again, India and Pakistan have failed miserably. Also in the politics, China, there is very low representation. And when we talk about services and enablers, Australia is still the forefront with a very low value of gender inequality, just from 0.95 to 1. So the advanced economies of Asia Pacific region, they have relatively done better as compared to the other ones. And when we talk about physical security, as compared to the rest of the world, physical security is still a big question in Asia Pacific. As you can see, the gender inequality ratio is a kind of medium approach, which is there in all of these countries. So we cannot really say that even the advanced countries like New Zealand, they have performed better as compared to that of the other countries of Asia Pacific. So as I said, that the conventional thinking and deep-rooted structural inequalities and discriminatory gender stereotypes is what is still trying to limit women's full as well as equal participation in all of these spheres. Now, this is what I wanted to represent, was how women are heavily underrepresented in leadership positions. So I think, as I said, that a lot of success has been made, and now even in India, we can see that more in maybe a university setup, more number of girl students are there as compared to those of the boys. So similarly, you can see in all of these countries, the number of girls who are tertiary educated graduates, the number is relatively high, but as soon as they start moving towards positions like entry level, then they go towards senior management and the board members, this number is relatively less. So you can see how many women were actually there in the university level, but how many women actually reached up to this point. And I can say that in this situation, even the advanced economies like Australia and Singapore are also lying far behind the other developed economies. So this is also one of the areas and which really needs to be worked upon, and it needs to be identified that what are the challenges as well as what are the gaps. Because so as I was reading through, I found that the major reason, obviously, we can see is the family responsibilities, which really kind of insist women that, okay, I cannot proceed on my career that far, or I have other responsibilities to look forward. And secondly, I would say the access to that modern education is not so much available for women, and that also makes a limiting factor for them to represent or to reach such leadership positions. So as you can see, the situation has improved from 2011 to 2016. So this was 6% and then at 13. However, this is still far behind as compared to the other countries like Canada and France, where it's 27% and 39%. Now, 5 areas for change in Asia Pacific. Now, we talked about that, okay, we are lagging behind in so-and-so areas and still lot needs to be done. So it has been projected that if this gender parity is achieved and if much amount of work is done on gender equality, by 2025, the countries can improve their GDP as projected. So basically, India and China would be leading with 17.6% and 12.8%. But then again, this entire thing really depends upon how the objective of gender parity is achieved. And for this, we really need to focus upon the female labor force participation. We need to address the regional and global issues. And also, we need to improve the socioeconomic situation of the women and shift that kind of attitude, shift that kind of mindset which people have about a woman's role in society and work. So I think the majority problem is that people have kind of underlying reservations and they have certain kind of mindsets about women that really needs to be changed if we are looking for this kind of economic development. And then, yes, collaboration on regional solutions such as financing as well as knowledge sharing. Now, after Asia Pacific, moving over to Europe. So as you have seen in the previous slides, that Europe is relatively far ahead and it has done a lot on EU gender equality. So this is again a gender equality index of EU. So a gap of 0% shows that the gender equality is existing. And as you can see here, Sweden is almost 83.8%. So that means they have achieved the gender equality by 83.8%, followed by other countries. And in this list, I think Hungary and Romania are the countries which are at the bottom. And a few interesting facts about Europe are that in 2020, the unemployment rate for men was just 0.7% higher for men than for women. And this is really a great figure because as compared to the Asia Pacific region, where there's a huge percentage of this unemployment difference between men and women. And then female unemployment rate is just 4.7% in Denmark. And surprisingly, the difference in unemployment rate between men and women is 0% in Sweden. So we can have an idea that gender parity is not that much an issue in Europe, and more or less women are considered equal in most parts of EU. So again, as I said, that there has been improvements, but still there is a room in which we can really further work upon achieving this gender equality agenda. And in this case, it really needs to be looked upon, including the attacks on women's reproductive health as well as rights. And again, their equal representation in equality policies and standards, in political and public decision-making. And that is how we can bridge the gap which is still existing. And as I previously told, that the Gender Equality Index is based upon these different spheres, that's of knowledge, time, power, health, and relatively good in case of gender parity as compared to that of the money and the work. And power, which I see the representation in the political positions or in leadership positions, that's the least one with 48.5%. And there again, there has been different amount of declarations and policies which have been developed, and different steps have been taken by the governments in order to promote this equality. So the major one is the European Union Gender Equality Strategy, which really needs to or wants to achieve this gender equal Europe by 2025. And most important agendas to talk about are to ensure equal pay, to promote a better work-life balance, and to guarantee gender equality in the institutions, as well as to promote research on gender equality. And apart from this, a number of non-governmental organizations and societies are really working for this cause in EU. Now, talking about further would be United States of America. So as I said, it would really, for me, it was astonishing because I would have assumed that, okay, since US is a developed and a very advanced economy, this gender gap should be relatively less. But as I said, it has improved over years, but still a lot needs to be done. There's gender parity, not only in the social setup, but also in what kind of pay benefits are there. So in US, a woman earns 80 cents for every $1 which is earned by her male counterpart. So this is astonishing to see that despite of them doing the same job and having the same education, she's going to be paid less just because she's a woman. So then there has been less representation in politics, and there has been disparity And I would say, however, the recent win by the Indian-born US Vice President Kamala Harris has really given a boost to women's political representation and participation. But still, it really needs to be seen what happens and how the policies work in the next few years for these countries. And also one thing to mention is that United States is just one of the few countries that has still not accepted the United Nations policy on women discrimination. So as I said, yes, there have been certain steps and there have been improvisations, but still the gap which is existing is really a lot. And that definitely that would take a lot of efforts as well as time in order to bridge that gender gap. And this is just a snapshot from the gender pay gap. And it's interesting to find that countries like South Korea and Japan, they have almost 36.6% this gender pay gap. So a male counterpart earns 37% almost higher than women. Also in Japan, it's 27%. And the bottom of the list is New Zealand, where it's just 5.6%. So, as you really need some kind of statistics to support your point. And these statistics clearly show that what kind of situation is existing, despite you having, studied and despite having equally worked hard, you won't get the same pay because yes, you are a woman. So now moving to gender inequality in science. So I thought that honestly, for me, I haven't really experienced this, but from experiences of the people I have heard, this is also a very growing concern, which is there not only for the researchers, but also academicians. So there are a number of reasons why people think that, okay, STEM is not a good choice or STEM is not made for women, because we usually have a stereotype thinking that, okay, boys are better at science and maths and girls are not. And then you really think about that, okay, STEM careers are really male dominated and they're not suitable for women. So these are some of the, I would say, doubts which the people are having. And this kind of attitude only contributes to gender parity in science. So sharing an interesting research which was published in Nature back in 2019. So this was published in journal Stem Cell. And it showed that women, they make up half of the undergraduate and postgraduate students. They reach well up to the position of assistant professors and 23% of full professors. So you can say that 50% was the representation while you are at the university. However, that has decreased a lot as women progress higher in their career. So this ladder of moving higher up in your career is really very difficult for women. Again, many reasons come up, family responsibilities, personal choices. Obviously, we cannot really control them. But on the other hand, few people who have faced harassment or who have faced biasness. So institutions should really work upon investigating these matters and should really promote women in order to achieve these positions. And I think a little support will go a long way. So that is what actually needed. As I said, that they study well and they have a good representation at the university levels, but still the path ahead is really difficult for them because of various reasons. And this was again a snapshot from a paper which published a kind of comparison which was there between, like, again, men and women. So it states that almost like 50% of women, they leave active science after motherhood because active science or full-time science is really, it's cumbersome, it's tiring. So almost more than 50% women leave science, but as compared to that of the men, this is just like maybe 29 or 30%. So again, a number of reasons come up. It could be your family thing, gender imbalance. However, what is most important to be noted is if there are any situations of harassment or bullying, or if the issue lies because of the gender pay gap or the economic situation, these things really need to be worked upon in this area. And this is an interesting report from, so this really leads to the academicians. And you see this blue graph represents the author gender ratio. So the blue one is for males and this orange one is for females. And then for different subjects like physics, mathematics, computer science, and engineering. And again, you see that, okay, despite that you have got an education, you are a full-time academician, but still the publication thing or the research outcome thing is not that much for the females as compared to that of the males. And I would say, again, a number of reasons are responsible, maybe lack of collaboration or lack of that networking. So all these issues really need to be looked upon, and organizations and institutions should work towards achieving these goals and how to contribute towards the development of especially the female staff as well as the female academicians who are there, and how they can be supported in their career growth. Now, this was a decadal plan, and this has been developed by Australian Academy of Sciences in order to promote gender equity in STEM. It really looks upon how to improve the leadership positions, then how the evaluation should be done, and obviously to promote a peaceful workplace culture. What kind of education, maybe a separate kind of advanced training courses should be imparted to women, and also some kind of industrial collaboration should be worked upon. So I would definitely vote for some kind of special incentives which should be given for women academicians as well as women in science, so that they can, they can work upon to move their career ahead. And just moving towards gender inequality in COVID times, I think this has been really a difficult time for everyone across the globe. But honestly, I would say it has been a little bit difficult more for the women. So the women have been as a frontline worker, whether it's a doctor, a nurse, or a healthcare professional. But still, this gender inequality and gender parity has increased during the COVID time. So there has been lockdown situations which has given rise to domestic violence against women and girls. And I would say most importantly, which I bet every one of us has really shared, is that you need to share your work responsibilities and your home responsibilities, and attaining that work-life balance really becomes difficult, I would say, especially in the lockdown and in these critical COVID times. So the governments and policies makers really need to take into account such situations which can increase this gender parity, and therefore I think some special policies need to be built upon for these kind of situations too. And as I said, that it will take almost 200 years for us in order to achieve gender equality. So the Gender Global Index report states that none of us will be able to see gender parity, and even none of our children will be able to see gender parity. And I can certainly bet that it's going to take more than 200 years before we actually say that we have achieved gender equality. However, the thought is what should be done at the moment and how it can be done. So I think the most important thing which really needs to be done at the level of society is that men should actively contribute towards promoting this gender equality, and you really need to support women to advance on a couple of levels. And then again, yes, governments have been making policies and there have been promises, but it actually needs to be seen upon that how much is translated into practical sense. And we really need to work upon the exploitation and inequality which occurs at micro and macro levels. Also, a safe and I would say a a joyable, safe, and working learning environment is important for women. And no women should be really, afraid in order to put forward such kind of issues, because what I know is women are afraid. They really don't bring about such issues of gender parity, harassment, or anything. So the environment should be such that they can honestly tell, and they are really courageous in order to come up that, okay, these wrong things are being are happening or whatsoever. So such kind of environment building is really important. And I think it's not just when policies are being made, but it's when policies, stakeholders, and the societies, they are coming together. And it has to be a kind of positive change for the whole of the society. And I think that coming from the times of, I get reminded of Marie Curie, who won Nobel Prize twice in 1903 and 1911. Coming from the times of Marie Curie to last year, when two female scientists won the Nobel Prize for the CRISPR technology, that's I think Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel. So the times have changed, and women are doing a lot. You see, it's not just an engineer, a doctor, or a healthcare worker, pilot, auto rickshaw driver. There are n number of opportunities. It's just that we need to provide that kind of environment, and we really need to work upon those policies in order to bridge those loopholes, those gaps. And as I've already stated, that if this positive change occurs, this can contribute to the development of GDP. And just for India, this GDP growth could be almost 18% if gender parity is achieved. And yes, I would say, not even going to the society outside, gender equality or gender equality starts at home. So the way you treat each other, the way one gender treats each other, it's a kind of setting example for our daughters, sons, or for our next generations. And ultimately, as said by Mahatma Gandhi, that a family builds a home, and I say a family builds a nation. So you really need to start at home, or we really need to start this thing in our own environment. We need to raise our boys in such a way that they consider girls to be equal. So that concept of gender should be eliminated just at our home levels. And also, I think gender parity would be achieved that day, that when we celebrate the birth of a daughter with that much joy as the birth of a son. So we really need to treat our boys and girls equally. We need to tell our sons that doing household work is not just a girl's thing, but it can be done by a boy. We need to support, especially this message is for the men at home. So you need to support the career of your daughter, sister, mother, wife, because ultimately it's going to improve your way of living. It's going to improve your socioeconomic condition. And then we also need to have a fair share of the work and family responsibilities in order to achieve that work-life balance. And lastly, not even at home, I would say to all women that gender equity starts with you only. You really need to have that determination and that goal orientation in order to achieve something in life. And your goal could be big or small, but you really need to challenge yourself. You really need to speak for yourself. And again, I would really be cautious in telling everyone that feminism is not women empowerment. It's not that, okay, I'm independent, I can do whatever I want to do. No, I won't suggest that. You have to be very mindful of your actions. And yes, as they say, education is the key to everything. So you really need to, especially at university levels, I would say you really need to contribute and work hard towards your education. You need to challenge yourself, speak for yourself, and be ambitious. And lastly, you have to be your own superhero. So nobody is going to come to rescue you. And if you want something to happen, this would definitely happen. But yes, the key is you need to stand for yourself and you need to be really determined in whatever you want to do. Yeah, so with this, I end my presentation, and I would just give this message that empowered women can empower the world. Women have really contributed a lot, and I think each one of us really needs to do a bit in order to achieve this equality further. And I think once it's done, definitely we can see the world growing. So yeah, thanks a lot for your attention. And I would be happy to answer if you all have any questions, any comments, or any suggestions.
Thank you, Kanika. Hello.
Yes, sir,
Hello.
we can hear you.
Kanika, I thoroughly enjoyed your speech today. And I especially mentioned your delivery was so amazing that I have lost all my track and just started listening to you. By and measure, I think you are a very effective speaker and a fantastic educator. And for your kind information, your alma mater, this college, we are proud of you. I want to share one thing with you that in your college, 39% girls are taking education in B Pharma out of 100, and 65% female are working in our college, and out of 100%, 60% of female that are getting higher salary in our college. So we're proud of that also, and the suggestions you have made over here, we try to include in our faculty and other people's here also. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. I think first of all, I should be thankful to all the faculty who have taught us, because I've been taught by Dr. Kumar Gaurav sir, pharmaceutical engineering, and then Ashwini sir, medicinal chemistry, Bhavna ma'am, chemistry. So I think it's all your you have helped us to generate this confidence and realize our potential and give us quality education. And more than that, I'm happy to see the institution growing and achieving new heights of success. And yes, especially the figures you told me, I'm really happy for that. And I think moving on such path, we can definitely achieve gender parity and achieve all these issues. So thanks a lot for having me here.
Thanks to you for giving us time.
No worries, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, as a token of respect, we would like to present a certificate to you. It will be on the screen soon.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And tomorrow the session will start at sharp 11 a.m. So all of you please join at 11. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Okay, ma'am.
Bye.